of our candidates. From downtown Toronto, even though he's an Alberta candidate, Conservative Garnet Jenis. From Vancouver, NDP candidate Jenny Kwan. And here in the studio, Liberal candidate Greg Fergus. All right, Garnet, I'm going to go to you. All the experts say there's really not a whole lot of rich or middle-class countries that are just taking our aid and pocketing them for themselves. Where is this $1.5 billion being wasted?
Well, I disagree with some of the preamble. Let me put this policy out there, and I think it's an important substantive policy that many Canadians will respond well to. First of all, it is increasing the amount of resources that we're giving to the world's poorest countries. So we are going to do a reallocation that reflects our priorities, which is to focus on helping the most vulnerable individuals and countries, and then at the same time to reallocate some of the money back here to Canada to support Canadians who are struggling to get ahead. The money we are allocating from is coming from countries that are already doing relatively well. I think Canadians expect that our foreign aid goes to countries that are most vulnerable and that we're taking care of people at home. It'd be difficult, and I'd be curious for my colleagues on this panel's thoughts on, for instance, the fact that some of our foreign aid went to Italy, to Turkey, to Brazil. What's the case for Italy getting some of our foreign aid? I think most Canadians would say, let's give more to the most vulnerable and let's make sure Canadians are taken care of as well.
Okay, you're taking it right off my script because that's what I was going to ask him. I'll talk to you, Jenny Kwan, about this. Are we giving money to Italy and Argentina and countries that clearly don't need it?
Well, you know, it's so classic conservative, to be honest with you. We hear them do this over and over and over again, and it is their politics of division and always pitting communities against communities, and to say that this group is more vulnerable than that group, and so on. And you know what? Canada actually has an important role to play in the global stage, in people who are in need of foreign aid. And these are groups that has been identified by the UN in terms of aid to which we provide. And the UN has designated to say that, in fact, we need to be contributing 0.7% towards that aid in terms of gross national income. And we're not even close to meeting that. We're only at 0.28%, by the way.
Right. I'm just curious, though, Greg, I'll re-ask you the question. Are we giving money to countries that don't need it? I mean, sure, we're not even close to the UN target. I'll agree with that. But Garnet's point is, well, we're going to take it from countries that don't need it, give some more to the poorest countries, and then take some of it back for Canadians. So what's wrong with that?
It would give me great pleasure to answer that question directly. But first of all, let me just say that I just think that was an amazing example of conservative math where you're saying they're going to cut back by 25%, but somehow you're spending more on foreign policy. But second thing, the reason why we're giving to countries like Italy, the reason why we're giving countries like Italy is because we're giving it to help the migrants who are crossing the Mediterranean Ocean, who are risking life and limb to get across to the Italian island. Your organizations such as the UN Food Agricultural Organization, this is where these places are based. It's not actually helping out Italians. It's helping out groups which are helping out refugees and people who need our help the most. The thing that you want to do, Dan, and I think Don, sorry, and I think Canadians really understand, is that you want to be able to help people where they're at so that they don't feel that pressure to move or to seek refuge elsewhere, that they can have a prosperous country where they are.
You know, Garnet, that makes some sense. If it's geography, if an agency that needs the aid is in a geographical location that might be in a more affluent country, what's wrong with giving it to the agency to help the ones who really do need it?
But Don, let's look at the example that Greg just gave, right? So we have migrants that are fleeing extreme poverty in certain parts of Africa, and they're going to Europe. And what I'm saying, what our conservatives are saying is, let's focus our aid in those countries with that extreme poverty. To Jenny's point, I mean, you don't fight poverty by giving money to countries who are not poor. Of course, there are needs in every country. Of course, there are people who are struggling in every country around the world. But relatively well-off countries can have a greater capacity to take care of the needs of those who are struggling within their own country. So I'm saying for Canada, conservatives like for Canada, let's help those countries that have the least capacity, and let's also do a better job of ensuring we have resources here in Canada for vulnerable people right here.
Well, because of geography,
he's also saying that they're going to cut it by 25%.
Okay, let me just quickly get Jenny in here.
I'm sorry.
But because of geography, though, right, those migrants are going to those other designated countries for safety. And so Canada actually has a role to play. And we need to be supporting these refugees, these individuals who are fleeing persecution. And some of it could be persecution from a variety of different reasons, including environmental and climate impacts as well. And so, yes, we should be supporting Africa and other countries. But you know what? Canada's contribution in total is only 0.28%. So think about that.
Yeah,
there is a grave need out there. And we actually have the highest number of people who are fleeing persecution today, since the World War II. So we can do more. To pit communities against communities, frankly, is wrong. And you know what? The Conservatives do this over and over and over again. How about taking money from the wealthiest Canadians, from the biggest corporations, and redirecting those billions of dollars to help Canadians here at home?
Just a brief point of response to what Jenny was saying. She mentioned global migration challenges. We have many migrants coming to Canada as well. And I think we need to make sure we have the resources here to support the needs of our immigration system right here in Canada. So our policy is to put more to the most vulnerable and have those resources here in Canada for the very kinds of needs
Well, we
Jenny
do
is
have the
talking about.
resources. We just need to spend the resources in the right place and prioritize it in the right place.
I've got to give Greg a last word on this one quickly.
So I just, again, think it's really funny that they want to be able to cut, they want to spend 75-cent dollars as opposed to 100-cent dollars and expect that that's going to do more for people outside of the country. I think that's not. Doesn't make sense. I do want to quickly
bring in Environmental Defense is a well-known environmental group, and they, on behalf of 13 other groups, they asked all the parties a whole series of questions, whether they would strive to ban single-use plastics, whether they would aim their legislative agenda to get the global warming from going above 1.5 degrees, and questions like that. All the parties responded in the affirmative. The Conservatives all responded the negative, although they did put a blanket answer at the bottom. Garnet, do you not think the Conservatives need to get a little more green in their campaign, or they risk alienating a big chunk of undecided voters?
Well, let me say two things about that right off the top. The first is that this was a survey in which the responses were deemed to have been no, but all as candidates were familiar with these sort of yes/no surveys that kind of limit your option in terms of explanation and nuance. Folks that want to know the Conservative plan can go to arealplan.ca. That, again, is arealplan.ca. Very detailed environmental policy that Conservatives put out. It's probably the most detailed environmental policy we've ever seen from an opposition party. And it's an effective response to the environmental challenges that we face that emphasizes technology, not taxes, that emphasizes innovation, and that positions Canada to be a real leader on the environment. At the end of the day, we have the same targets as the Liberals, but our plan is going to allow us to get there.
Okay, 50 seconds or less, Jenny.
Well, exactly the point. The Liberals and the Conservatives have exactly the same targets. And so to that point, the Conservatives are blind to the climate strike that just took place in our communities today. In Montreal, some 500,000 people went out to say that there is a climate emergency and we need to act. And they're blind to that. And the Liberals are not any better because they actually are using the Conservative targets, the Harper targets. We're not going to get there. So we need to actually make changes. In this election, we have a choice, because if we don't take action in this generation, it will be too late. And I hope that the people will look at the orange door for a change.
Okay, last word to you, Greg.
We have the most credible plan and realistic plan to not only green our country, but also to grow the environment, grow the economy. When you take a look at the Conservative plan in terms of what they have done, is that they have a very voluminous platform, except that every single serious expert in the climate field has panned their plan.
Greg, your own experts say that you don't have a plan to reach your targets.
Is the best one that's going to do that, and that we're going to certainly get there.
You're not on track to reach your targets.
Zero net emissions by 2020.
Your own internal analysis shows that you're not on track to meet your own targets.
Well, let's leave it at that.
And those targets are the Conservative targets.
We'll see you next week. Thanks again.
Thanks.